welcome to the morning session on social sciences. I would like to introduce the first speaker, which is Jovita Borchet, and she's going to speak on child parentification in the context of relationships with siblings.
Can you hear me without the microphone? Because no? Oh, okay. Is it okay? It's working. I'm kind of naturally nosy, so I don't like that kind of devices. My name is Dorota Borchet. I'm a PhD student from University of Gdansk Institute of Psychology, and I'm interested in family psychology. And today I would like to present some of my preliminary research on childhood parentification in terms of relationship with siblings. So we can start with the definition of parentification. It's in a shortcut, it means that there is a role reversal between the child and his or her parents. So in this kind of situation, the child isn't being cared by the parents, but is rather caring about them. In some circumstances, it may be beneficial, but only under certain conditions that I will talk about them later. Of course, that kind of dysfunction of the care in the family is in most cases not non-adaptive. There are some divisions of parentification. The first one is the one proposed by Jurkowicz, and he talks about instrumental and emotional parentification, and the instrumental form is connected with organizing the family life and physical tasks and chores performed by the child. In that kind of situations, the child is overwhelmed and burdened with activities like cleaning, cooking, taking care about younger siblings, providing for the family, earning money, or even taking care about the family members that are ill, mentally and physically disabled. I would like to say that is very important. I'm not talking about the situation when the child has family chores because parents want his or her to be responsible. It's a situation when there are too much tasks for the resources and age for the child. The younger is the child, the more detrimental are the consequences of being overburdened. Another one kind of parentification divided by Jurkowicz is emotional one, and that kind of situation the child is focused on emotional and social needs of the family members, and the child is focused on caring about the atmosphere in the family. For instance, the child can be sensitive to his or her parent moods, becomes a mediator in a parental conflict, or may become a confidant to his parents, or a scapegoat. Another division of parentification is the one proposed by Chase. She distinguishes parentification on its consequences. It can be constructive, but only in that situations when child feels helpful, valuable, is appreciated in the family. It's like some kind of positive reactions from the family, and the situation isn't a taboo and a secret in the family. In that kind of situation, the child can boost his or her self-agency, self-esteem, feels competent, feels agent, and reversing the roles may foster the strategies of coping and achieving goals. And moreover, being responsible for other ones enables children to learn how to be in relationships with others and how to maintain that kind of relations. But parentification in most cases is destructive. It's a situation which goes beyond the child's capabilities and exhausts the resources. So there are some negative consequences like anxiety disorders, personality disorders, eating disorders, use of psychoactive substances, low academic success, because children are underachieving due to the fact they cannot focus on their school tasks. Mental disorders, difficulties in relationships, as well as poor parenting skills in adulthood, because parentification is said to be a phenomenon that transfers through the generations. When the child becomes an adult and becomes a parent, that person would probably expect from his own child that the child would care about him, because that's the pattern of relationships between mother, father, and the child that the person knows from his own house. Why I would like to focus on relationship with siblings? Because parents can be inefficient from various reasons. It can be being addicted, it can be being disabled, it can be being immature. There are so many various reasons, and in that kind of situation, siblings may become important figure in one's development, because brothers and sisters provide themselves not only companionship but also role models. They care for each other, they can help each other, and what is more, they have mutual contribution in one's individual development. So I wanted to focus on relationships between sibling relationships and parentification characteristics. I think it's important because parentification is more likely to occur in crisis situations like divorce, conflict, or diseases. So it seems very reasonable to look for protective factors such as relationship with siblings. And I have 3 hypotheses here. The first one is that the number of siblings is related to the intensity of parentification characteristics. Moreover, women would report higher intensity of parentification than men, and that the quality of sibling relationships is connected with parentification characteristics. I had 218 participants. All of them, of course, were people who had siblings. Most of them were women, as it usually is in research in social science. And they were young people studying, living or mostly on their own without parents, very often unemployed still, so probably having some support, financial support from the parents, and most of them had one sibling. Here is a distribution of how many siblings my participants had. And I used 2 questionnaires. The first one is the questionnaire of relationship with siblings, and it was in order to measure that variable, and parentification was measured by using the Polish adaptation of Hooper's parentification inventory, which I'm finishing with my co-workers. And the model, I can say that the model from the American tool is the same in the Polish sample, so that the test can be used in Polish conditions and has good reliability results. And the first hypothesis was confirmed because the number of siblings was positively correlated with intensity of perceiving benefits of parentification, even though the effect was low. But what is, I think, what is very interesting, that the rest of the parentification characteristics, which is being focused on parents or helping the siblings, it was not significant. The second hypothesis also was partly confirmed because women were more involved with taking care about their parents than men do, and there were no more significant differences. In the third hypothesis, the results show that perceiving benefits of parentification is related to all the sibling relationships dimensions, which were cohesion, communication, and rivalry. And the results are um, consistent because the higher was the rivalry between siblings, the less benefits of parentification they perceive. It's theoretically acceptable because rivalry, when it's too high, it means that the relationships between siblings are not in good quality. And here we come with some conclusions. Firstly, sisters turn out to be more burdened with taking care about their parents than their brothers, but the literature is not that sure about that fact. Involvement of the boys in the family care might be underestimated because due to the stereotype of a macho man, they may think that describing their family chores is unmanly, and they exhibit less willingness to share that kind of experiences. Another conclusion is that the more children lives in the family, the more beneficial in the difficult situation of parentification they perceive. Perhaps the relationship may stem from the fact that in childhood people with several siblings they can share responsibilities with their siblings. So that enables them to use less resources because they can divide that kind of difficult chores. And the support from siblings may relieve them, and moreover they build experience of cooperation, and they might find some kind of joy and closeness with the siblings. Okay. Moreover, good relations and communication between siblings, it may be the reason why the adolescent cares for parents also, because it was also correlated. Because when you care about your whole family, you also care about your loved brother or sister, because you all live in the same house with the same parents, and the atmosphere touches everyone. And of course, by dint of good relationships, young people can share responsibilities, receive support from them, and it allows to perceive benefits. Why is it all important? Because there are some cultural changes in today's world connected with increasing demand for the child help in the family. It may be caused by uprising divorce rate, decreasing number of children in the family, so there is no one to divide the chores with me, for instance, or immigration of parents. And looking for protective factors in face of parentification is important because siblings can be a source of support and help in that difficult and traumatic experiences. So thank you very much, and here's some literature.
Okay, thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. Are there any questions?
Did the position of the child in the sibling hierarchy, for example, the middle child, the oldest, the youngest, had it affected the parentification process in any way?
That's a very good question, because as I said, it was only the preliminary research. Now we are starting bigger project, and then the position will be very important variable. Here I haven't controlled that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions?
I just want to asking about your hypothesis. In the second hypothesis that you say that woman is significant, right? And then is it is a kind of like, for me, is kind of like a bias with your sampling, because most of your sampling is from the woman's side.
Yes, but sorry, I haven't told that in my presentation. I used non-parametrical tests, so that bias is not important now. Because I knew that it's over-representation of women, so I chose that kind of analysis.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You. The second person is Irmina Stasiak with the role of the First Lady in the United States of America.
Good morning. Good morning. The director said that he's the oldest fan of this conference. I'm gonna say that I'm the oldest student who is gonna give the speech today. Title of my presentation is the role of the First Lady in the United States of America. Oh my God, you see, that's why. I don't know how to make it. I'm sorry. Why it's not visible? How?
We have some help, please.
I'm always lucky one. And I'm also want to say sorry because I'm gonna use some short notes I made because of my age and not remembering the stuff so well as my young colleagues before. Okay, before I start, I would like to say a few words about who is the First Lady and in the United States. So she's actually quite, she's a kind of hostess of the White House. The First Lady is not elected person. She carries no official duties and she receives no salary. Nonetheless, she attends many officials ceremonies and she has also a lot of functions of state. And she has her own staff. And the people are like social secretary, chief of staff, flower designer, and many other more. There are 5 living former First Ladies who are still living. Rosalind Carter, who was a wife, of course, of Jimmy Carter. Barbara Bush, who was wife to George H.W. Bush. Hillary Clinton, and I'm gonna say a few words about her. Who is the wife still. Thinking about what's happened, she's still the wife of Bill Clinton. Laura Bush, who is married to George W. Bush, and my favorite, Michelle Obama, who is married to Barack Obama. The first lady was Martha Washington, who was married to George Washington, the first president of the United States. Okay. Sorry, guys. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. It's gonna take forever. You're gonna sit here till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Eleanor Roosevelt, she was born in 1884. She passed away in 1962. She was actually, those first ladies I chose because they were quite meaningful for me. So this is just my choice. So Eleanor Roosevelt served as a First Lady from March 1933 till April 1945. And it was the longer than any other president's wife served. Eleanor set the standard for First Lady, and she got a lot involved in social issues. And actually, she was the one who showed that First Lady is not only the wife of the president. She has actually an important part of American politics. So, as we can see, she became a role model for women actively involved in their communities and nations. And what I want to add is that she organized a lot of White House conference only for women, which was actually quite important because that time in about 1938-40, the journalist women were excluded from serious media events. Also, she did quite important thing as in 1938 during the human welfare conference in Alabama. After her arrival, she sat she sat beside an African American associate, ignoring the designated white-only section. So it was also quite important. She was also member of. She was also the member of. I have it. Sorry. She was also the member of League of Women Voters, which was also important, and even Roosevelt has passed away. She was still quite important she was quite important role for American women in general. Next one is Jacqueline Kennedy. She was born in 1929. She passed away in 1994. As we all know, she wasn't so long the first lady, but she was one of the most popular first ladies. Apart from her being the fashion icon, even during her time, she did a lot for the White House. Her first mission as a first lady was to transform the White House into a museum of American history and culture. And she won actually an Emmy award for her television tour of the White House. She invited the television, and they made some documentary, and she won the prize. Also, she was actually she advertised the United States to other countries, and she won actually wide praise for her beauty, fashion sense, and facility with languages. She spoke 4 languages. And she also traveled a lot with JFK, and I have to tell you what I found, that during the traveling to Paris in 1961, Kennedy said that to the reporters that I'm the man who accompanied Jacqueline Kennedy to Paris. So she was actually quite important for him, apart that he had an affair with Marilyn Monroe, but this is a different story. And she actually captivated the nation and the rest of the world with her intelligence, beauty, and grace. And what's more, she was the first lady to hire the press secretary. Hillary Clinton, here we are. She was born in 1947. And as we all know, she is the only first lady to ever seek elective office, and she was nominated for the presidency for a major political party. As we know, she didn't manage. Mr. Trump won. She was the first lady who held a postgraduate degree. She managed to finish Yale University. As the first lady, she managed to establish her own working office in the West Wing. She actually spent whole time as a first lady to focus on medical care program, but it didn't work well. What's more, unfortunately, Bill and Hillary Clinton were the first couple to be fingerprinted by FBI. I have to say that, and she was the senator and the first lady for 20 days, so this is only very unusual. Michelle Obama, as I said before, my favorite, my star, she was born in 1964. We have to say that she is the first African-American first lady in the history. She focused mainly her attention on issues such as support of military families, helping working women balance between career and family, and encouraging national service as well. She focused also on current social issues such as poverty, healthy living, and education. Her and her husband took a lot of, they put a lot of effort, and they took a lot of time. They had these programs for feeding the poor people. They were preparing the food. I'm sure that you've seen it on internet. And in 2012, she announced this fitness program for kids, Let's Move, which was really well known all over the United States, as we know that Americans have huge problem with overweight. And I found very nice words she said one time, and I would like to share with you. So she said, you have to stay in school, you have to go to the college, you have to get your degree, because that's the one thing people can take away from you is your education, and it is the worth investment. And least but not last, Melania Trump. She was born in 1970, and so far there is not much we can say about her. She's not political active yet, and she's actually quite silent. Sometimes I think that his daughter Ivanka is playing the role of first lady. However, she is trying to initiate some programs, and the last one is cyberbullying among the youth. She speaks Slovenian, French, German, Serbian, as we can see, and after her speech, I'm sure you know about this as well, many people made fun of her as they found out that it was so identical to Michelle Obama during the Democratic National Convention speech. However, she's trying to be like Jacqueline Kennedy in some way. I found some interview with her, and she said that she would like to be like Jacqueline, but unfortunately we still cannot say about it. So I'm sure that, and I hope that she will improve herself, and after years we can be able to say some positive words about her. So thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions, I am more than happy to answer.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions?
I wanted to ask if the role of First Lady is always filled. I know that sometimes the president who becomes president doesn't have a wife, or the wife has passed away, and sometimes the daughter takes the role.
No,
Never?
no, the first lady is always the partner or spouse, the wife. I found on internet that the role started, the role of first lady started in 1800, 1830, and when the president had no wife, there was no first lady at all. So this is exactly the role of the wife of the president.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Thank you. I would like to ask whether you did an estimation of trends, changes in the role, position, influence, scope of activities of the first ladies you investigated. And the other point, did you do any research over the social perception of this selected first ladies?
I chose those first ladies as I found them interesting. I mean, I had to mention about Melania as she's the present first lady, but she's not doing much. But all of those which I chose, they were very meaningful also as an independent person, because they were doing a lot for people. As I said on the beginning, it wasn't only the role to be the wife, but also to do something extra. And I think that Roosevelt and Clinton, we know her, right? She wanted always to be the president on the first place. And Kennedy wasn't that long, but Obama did really a lot. And that's why all those five. I was checking on the other options, but only 10 minutes, which I had, it wasn't long enough to introduce some other important first ladies.
Question? I'm afraid the battery is off. Yeah. Any more questions? No. Okay. Thank you very much. And now next we are going to listen to the presentation on the dark side of immigration.
So, hello everyone. We are Natalia Grajaszek and Mirka Romaniuk. We are on American Studies at the University of Gdansk, and we are going to talk about the recent changes concerning immigration to show the dark side of this of different processes on the examples of Europe and the United States.
Okay, so let's start with immigration policy in European Union. As many of you may know, European countries have both European and their own national rules. But they have also agreed that they should have common immigration and visa policies that are to be governed by the principle of solidarity and fair sharing of responsibility, including its financial implications between member states. So in recent years, the number of people migrating to Europe has increased dramatically, mainly due to the conflict in the Middle East. In 2016 alone, more than 1 million people applied for refugee status in the European Union. The majority of them arrived from Muslim societies, namely Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. So, according to a recent survey, the refugee crisis has changed the attitude of Europeans toward immigrants, which is illustrated by this map. As you can see, only 3 years ago, the majority of European countries had a rather positive attitude toward immigration. However, nowadays, most of the countries feel at least uneasy about the recent influx of refugees. So the real question is, why do European countries have a negative attitude toward immigration? So first of all, the news of spreading terrorism in Europe that took lives of approximately 300 people have provoked that many Europeans think negatively about this recent influx of refugees. Above that, let's not forget that only a few days ago, Europe was attacked again in Manchester, where 22 people lost their lives. And research has found that everything that is currently happening in Europe provoked that 59% of Europeans stated that they fear that immigrants will increase the likelihood of terrorism. The most concerned countries are Hungary, with 76%, and Poland with 71%. But terrorism is not the only concern they have about immigration. Many are also worried that they will not only take away their jobs, but also their social benefits, and above that, 60% of people stated that they fear that immigrants will be a burden on the economy. And the most concerned are again Hungarians with 82% and Poles with 75%. Furthermore, the open door policy in Germany has provoked many disturbing news for its citizens. Sexual violence has reached epidemic proportions since Chancellor Angela Merkel allowed into the country more than 1 million of mostly male migrants from Asia, Africa, and Middle East. And research has found that 50% of Europeans fear that immigrants will increase the level of crime and threaten their security. The most concerned are Italians this time, with 57%, and Swedes with 56%. But when it comes to culture differences, many Europeans fear that immigrants don't want to really assimilate. And research has found that 60% of Europeans want to stop Muslim immigration. And Poland was the country most in favor of Muslim ban, with over 71% of people agreeing with that statement, and Austria was close behind with 65%.
So when we talk about the United States, we have to remember that this country was created by various groups of immigrants over decades. And the last year's survey said that 72% of people said that the immigration in general is a good thing for America. However, at the same time, over 40% of people in another survey said that it's extremely both to halt the influx of illegal immigrants and to deal with those who are already in the country. And the first group that the United States have to deal with is the Mexicans. They were the biggest Hispanic minority in the United States in the year 2000. And looking only at the year 2016, there were 11.7 million Mexican immigrants. And at the same time, there were 11.3 million illegal immigrants. And half of that number, because 5.7 million, were Mexican illegal immigrants. And during the presidency of Barack Obama, we don't see any significant change on the federal level that would deal with the illegal immigration on a large scale. His administration focused mainly on gang members, convicted criminals, and those individuals who would endanger national security. And as a result, between 2008 and 2016, 3 million people were deported. Donald Trump has a slightly different approach, we can say more discriminatory as well. He creates a very negative image of Mexicans. He speaks directly, openly about them. And because of his, let's say, direct ways of speaking, negative ways of speaking about them, he helps create racial profiling because of that, because he associates criminals with the Mexicans, and later on Latino people are immediately associated with the criminals. He wants to get rid of all those immigrants who break the immigration law, meaning as well those illegal immigrants. And finally, we can say that his executive order to build the wall on the border with Mexico is a symbol of his isolationist approach toward the Mexicans. And the second group of immigrants that the United States have to deal with is the group of immigrants coming from the Middle East countries. And I think that we all remember the terrorist attack in the United States in 2001, or the wars with Iraq and with Afghanistan that the United States were involved in. Well, it's worth mentioning that since these attacks, there was no major threat of terrorist attack on U.S. soil. But Donald Trump, immediately after being sworn to office, decided to attempt it even twice, to introduce a travel ban, as he stated, to decrease the level of fear against potential terrorists that may come to America. And he tried to defend his decisions by saying that he did exactly the same what Barack Obama had done in 2011. But the difference is not only in the number of countries affected, because Donald Trump introduced preemptive defense, while Barack Obama acted upon a direct threat caused by a group of Iraqi nationals who attempted to send weapons to Al-Qaeda. And what is more, Donald Trump here as well repeats stereotypes, prejudices, and very often associates the Muslim religion to terrorism, and basically that's the foundation of the negative image of these immigrants. But however surprising however controversial his attempts to introduce the travel ban may be, surprisingly, around 50% of people in a survey conducted by Reuters said that they agreed with the ban. So the question is whether he just expressed what people in America think about those immigrants, or people started to think, started to follow his way of thinking about them. And passing to the conclusion, we can say that the dark side of immigration when it comes to America lies on the both sides of the border. With the Mexicans, we have illegal immigrants and prejudices and stereotypes and racial profiling. With those coming from the Middle East, we have also prejudices and stereotypes repeated by the president himself, and also terrorist attacks. This all led to more discriminatory and conservative policy introduced by Donald Trump. And trying to respond to the question where the world is heading, we can say that in the next few years, his administration will focus on further isolationism.
And when it comes to European Union, so the open door policy, in particular in Germany, of course had a noble goal of aiding people in need, forced to leave their country of origins overwhelmed by war. But as a result, huge numbers of people arrive into European Union, and after their arrival, the number of terrorist attacks has spiked, which led Europeans to associate refugees with terrorism. Above that, so we can say that everything that is happening in Europe, all the attacks, growing level of crime, cultural differences, resulted in general fear and unfavorable attitude toward refugees. And to answer the question where the world is heading in case of European Union, the situation is very similar to that of the United States of America. So we can say that Europe is slowly heading toward isolation, with their anti-immigration sentiment growing strong every day. And above that, we can say that 60% of people stated that they want to put a stop to immigration. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions?
What I took from your presentation was a lot of enquetes research was done about opinions of Europeans and people of United States about the people who come there as immigrants. But was there any research done about what immigrants feel? Do they want to, for example, stay in the country forever, or do they want to come back when the conflict ceases, or do they want to adapt to the culture and stay, or do they want to continue their own culture in the country, and so on, so on?
No, unfortunately, all the research was focused on Europeans or Americans, so no.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions?
Thank you. Just referring to the approach to explain the growing disagreement for immigration in Europe, you use this example that there is a growing terrorism, the number of growing immigrants and so on. But the statistics you showed are showing the surprising picture as the most negatively perceived immigration is in the country with the lowest number of immigrants, especially Poland and Hungary, where there is no any immigrants. So we happily also didn't have the terrorist attack till now. But already the level of social disagreement or negative approach is much higher than, let's say, in France or Germany. Did you try to do any explanation or research trying to show it?
Yes, the results, as I showed, they have almost a year. They are almost a year old because there are no new researches. So I'm sure that the numbers changed, and probably Germany, France, that were affected the most, now have a higher percentage of people wanted to stop the immigration.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Thank you very much. The next person is Mr. Mikulewicz with Adaptation to Climate Change in Africa. Welcome.
Hello. Hi. Thank you very much for coming. My name is Michael. I'm the third-year PhD student in human geography at the University of Manchester in the United Kingdom. And today I'm going to talk to you about adaptation to climate change. For those of you who are not familiar with the concept, adaptation to climate change are all these policies, mechanisms, strategies, projects, initiatives that are supposed to prepare us better for the impending impacts of climate change, such as sea level rise in coastal zones, droughts or floods. So you can think of an adaptation strategy as, for example, build the construction of seawalls in areas that are prone to sea level rise. In terms of agriculture, it can be the adoption of more drought-resistant seed varieties, where farmers actually switch their crop selection to those crops that are more resistant to droughts. Okay. So this is the outline of the presentation. I'm going to talk to you about adaptation in general a little bit more, and I'm going to move on to my research context, and then the emerging themes and the concluding thoughts, and I'm going to ask you for feedback if you have any. Just as a heads up, you're going to see a lot of pictures from my fieldwork. I just thought that it would be more enjoyable to listen to the presentation. I went to 2 countries in Africa to conduct my studies. I went to Ethiopia and Sao Tome and Principe, which is a small island nation in the Gulf of Guinea off the coast of Cameroon. I'm specifically interested in adaptation in sub-Saharan Africa, specifically how adaptation is facilitated by the United Nations, essentially looking at how farmers are being assisted with climate impacts by the UN system. So why do I study adaptation? If you look at this little purple dot, this is how much money is right now spent for adaptation initiatives per year just through the UN system. It's about $900 million per year. Starting in 2020, however, it's going to be about $50 billion per year. So you can see that there's a marked change in the importance that politicians, decision makers, and governments in general place on adaptation. So I thought it's very important to scrutinize what is actually happening on the ground in terms of adaptation, and what kind of impact so far adaptation has had on local people and smallholders or farmers in my case. So in terms of my research context, I want to critically examine how adaptation has been governed to date. I look at how it has been conceptualized, problematized, and operationalized by the development industry, like the UN system, the United Nations Development Program, and so forth. Importantly, I want to see, as I mentioned before, what kind of implications all this has for local people. Adaptation will happen on the ground. It will not happen in offices, in capitals. It will happen very locally, like in one of the villages I conducted my research in. These are the people who are affected by climate change. These are the livelihoods are actually threatened by droughts, floods, and other impacts. So in terms of how I study adaptation, I apply a framework that can be described as post-politics, and I see post-politics as a kind of a condition of governance that is described by 3 major processes. The first is the discourses of urgency. So all of us hear a lot about climate change nowadays. We are told that it's very important to do something about it, because if we don't, we'll miss the deadline and there will be some very severe consequences. We have to implement certain solutions to prepare ourselves for it, essentially. However, and that's related to the second process, these solutions are supposed to be selected by a very narrow group of people: scientists, engineers, consultants, people who have experience with climate change. We are supposed to listen to them to guide us to select the best possible solutions. There's no time, so we just have to follow their advice. Now, you can see how that can be problematic, because people without that kind of expertise can be immediately excluded from governance, because they don't have the knowledge, the experience, and their own opinion might not be paid attention to. However, the third process that defines this post-political governance is that these solutions are actually presented as being very democratically elected. So in the villages that I conducted my research in, there were a lot of consultations with UN staff members, and the villagers were asked to attend a meeting, and the results of the work of the consultants of the project were presented to them, and they would be told that we're going to do this and that in your community, and this will make you more resilient to climate change. So these are these projects are presented as very democratic, very participatory by nature, but in effect, the solutions are actually selected in distant institutional environments somewhere else. Now, in terms of my methodology, as I mentioned, I conducted fieldwork in 2 African countries. I conducted institutional ethnographies in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and in Sao Tome, the capital of Sao Tome and Principe, at the UNDP offices. I also conducted an ethnography of a local village in the country that is participating in an adaptation project that is supposed to make agriculture more resilient to climate change. I conducted expert interviews with a number of development professionals from different organizations from both countries, and then I conducted my analysis using thematic analysis. In terms of my emerging themes, I noticed that adaptation is described as having a deadline. So if you look at the poster here, this is a poster that advertises the first climate change fair of Sao Tome and Principe. It's an event that was organized last year in December by the United Nations in the country, where climate awareness is extremely low. People don't know what climate change is. They don't know what risks it poses. So the UN decided to organize an event, an education event. So very important is the title and the subtitle of that poster, Agir para a mudança, o clima muda, me adapto e tu, which means act towards change. The climate is changing and I'm adapting. Are you? So you can see that this discourse of urgency is very visible here. The audience is kind of faced with that apocalyptic imaginary of if you don't do something about climate change, about your behavior, you will face very extreme consequences of inaction. So this relates to the discourses of urgency that I mentioned before. So I also noticed that adaptation is understood as a very technical issue. So I asked the development professionals I interviewed about the biggest challenges that they find on the ground. What is it that adaptation is struggling with on the ground in local communities? And most of them actually said that it's local technical capacity, poor coordination of projects, lack of financial resources. So you can see it's very managerial, very administrative challenges that are being named by those professionals. And this is just a quote from one of them, saying that technical capacity and financial resource capacity are the biggest challenges. Essentially, there's not enough money and there's not enough expertise. And that is our problem in adapting to climate change. And the final theme I want to discuss here is that adaptation is context specific. So I asked a follow-up question saying, what are the opportunities for adaptation in the countries that you work in? You can see here that the different opportunities identified by the professionals are different for both countries. So the opportunities identified in Ethiopia are completely different than the ones identified in Sao Tome and Principe. And this points to the simple truth that adaptation is very specific in terms of where it happens. You cannot design a standard project somewhere in Geneva or New York and then hope to translate it into the local context without looking at it. It will not work, and it has not worked. And that's something that a lot of professionals do recognize. They say it's very generic and very standardized. They actually talk about cutting and pasting the project documents, the different outputs that are supposed to be achieved in different countries. So what I say in my research is that adaptation is not technical, it's political. Why is it political? Well, because critical adaptation research noticed that technomanagerialism, the focus on expertise, on science only, misses the point. It's not the lack of capacity in terms of science or technology that is the problem. It's actually lack of power or access to resources by local people. If you go into a local community in Sao Tome, for example, you will see a broad range of individuals, people who have fields and have laborers on those fields, and they have other businesses, and you have people who have no land and have to sell their labor to other people in the village. It's a very stratified landscape that climate adaptation professionals fail to notice and to acknowledge. So they design very standardized approaches that completely ignore local inequalities. However, there are winners and losers of adaptation. Some people inevitably will be able to steer their lives towards a more climate-proof future, whereas others will be left behind. And that's not only true for Africa, it's true for any context, developing countries or not. So I say that we should not focus so much on the technicalities and the administration of projects and stuff like that. I think that we should focus on low participation and democratic deficit. Local people who are marginalized are usually excluded from the process. Nobody asks them what they think they should do or what should be done to make them more resilient to climate change. Experts very often say that they know, they have the models, they have the technology, and as long as that advice is followed, everything will be okay. This runs the risk of helping some people at the community level while leaving others behind. And that is actually happening in one of the villages that I was working in. The village elite will probably take advantage of the adaptation project that is being implemented, whereas those who are in most need are completely ignored. So I'm saying that we should essentially politicize adaptation. We should look at what kind of power and resources people have access to and increase or democratize that access instead of blindly relying on technology and science. As important as they are, they cannot be the major point of focus because at the local level there will be winners and losers of adaptation. And thank you very much for your attention. And if anything that I just said makes any sense to you, I encourage you to read one of my articles that's been actually published recently in Climate and Development. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions?
So I was wondering, in the light of what I assume is still worsening state of the global warming, I was wondering whether you could maybe refer to the fact of Donald Trump becoming President of the United States and his, I think, let's say, unique attitude towards not only the global warming but the environment in general, and how could it maybe affect the future of the whole world?
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that from the perspective of my research and the people who I worked with. Luckily, his perspective is unique, so it's not the dominant one. But I think in terms of financing and in terms of the Paris Agreement, we still don't know if the U.S. will pull out of it. And if they do, it will jeopardize the whole global effort to do something about climate change. In terms of financing also, there might be less and less funds for climate change, adaptation and mitigation alike coming from the United States, which is one of the biggest donors. So I think at the level of developing countries, progress might be a bit stalled because specifically of the power that he wields, essentially.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Okay.
Sorry, my question refers more to the climate change and zone than the preparation of the consequences, because I wanted to ask, don't you think that kind of adapting to the changing environment is kind of curing the symptoms rather than the disease, which is climate change? And do you think could it be could there be more use in finding ways to prevent it than stopping kind of the consequences? And because the cause of global warming, let's not kid ourselves, are the more developed countries because of how much pollution they cause and what they create and what they do. So shouldn't there just be more, the responsibility of that shouldn't be more on them? And that's actually turned into the question.
Yeah. Sorry. So yeah, these are both good questions. I'll relate to the second one first. So one of the points of critique of in my research is that the solutions that are presented by experts are neoliberal by nature. They're very conservative. So they rely on the very mechanisms that caused climate change. So if you just go into a village and say, okay, well, you have problems with agricultural productivity because there has been a drought, you need to maybe introduce mechanization of agriculture because that will increase your yields. That is adaptation because it makes more money, but that also contributes to the problem. So that there's a tension there. The first question that you had, there's a huge debate between mitigation and adaptation. Mitigating is essentially addressing the causes. Adapting is responding to the symptoms. And about 10, 15 years ago, mitigation was the most important one. People were actually saying, like you are just saying now, we should not look at adaptation so much because it takes attention away from mitigation. We should be looking at the causes. Right now, because of more research, we know that adaptation is also necessary. We need both because at the local level, people are already starting to feel the effects. And these are mostly people who had nothing to do with causing climate change. There's a huge justice issue there. So not looking at adaptation at this point would be also irresponsible. So the $50 billion I showed you, that's only half of the fund. The other half of the Green Climate Fund, another 50 billion, is for mitigation, for renewable energy, for example. So we have to do both, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I think we were just running out of time. So yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Happy to talk to you later.
Okay, I would like to introduce three speakers from the University of Gdansk, and this is Karolina Najman, Aleksandra Sierant, and Magda Skrzynska, and they're going to talk about foreign influences in Poland.
So, hello. All three of us, Magda Skrzynska, Karolina Najman, and I, Ola Sierant, have prepared a presentation about foreign influences that are or actually have been visible in Poland over the years. So, as you probably know, one of the biggest impacts that the Polish society has ever experienced is, without a doubt, the one caused by the Russian regime in the period between the years 1952 and 1989. It was the time when Poland was actually subjected to the USSR and instead was called Polish People's Republic. It was also the time that has immensely influenced both the country and the attitude of Poles towards Russia and Russians themselves to this very day. The Russian Empire hugely impacted not only the politics of Poland, but also, as you know, the daily life of its citizens. It was not only through a censorship or other limitations of freedom, but also such spheres as music or literature. One of the most popular examples of the Russian influence on Poland was the emergence of Intervision Song Contest, which was organized in the years between 1977 and 1980. Previously, it was basically the Eastern Bloc equivalent to this day very known also a song contest called Eurovision. You can actually see the similarities between the both of the names. And it actually took place in Sopot, and to be more exact in Forest Opera. And on a side note, it was the whole contest and the whole concept originated from the so-called Sopot International Song Festival, which was firstly organized by the also quite significant Polish figure, which is Władysław Szpilman. Speaking of music, many Russian songs were kind of imposed on the Polish society by the radio stations constantly playing them. Simultaneously, lots and lots of Russian singers, such as Alla Pugachowa, Włodzimierz Wysocki, or Bułat Okudżawa, were very popular at that time. What is more, you may have heard about the so-called Alexandrov Ensemble, an official choir that, in fact, not only entertained audiences in Poland, but at some time the whole of the world. As for the sphere of television, when it comes to cartoons, for example, Polish children did not have much of a choice, to be honest. For example, one of the most known Russian cartoons was the one called Wilki Zając. As for the older audience, they usually preferred TV series such as Siedem Mgnień Wiosny and much more known Cztery Pancerni I Pies. The latter actually contained quite strong Soviet propaganda depicting the friendship between Poland and USSR at that time. When it comes to fashion, it actually became very popular among wealthier women to wear furs that, of course, were imported from USSR. And wearing this type of clothing was supposed to denote a higher social status of the person. And also, on a side note, when it comes to Russian, let's say, fashion trends such as furs and so on, even to this day, they are still very much visible, not only in Poland, but maybe much more in the fashion shows of one of the biggest designers of the world. And huge influence of the Soviet Union could even be seen on the very streets of some of certain cities. For example, because of the fact that Union authorities wanted to commemorate to some of the public or more historical figures, and the streets of the names of the streets were including their names. And fast forward to the contemporary Poland, because I think it's the most important factor of our presentation. There are visible quite differences when it comes to the attitude of the Poles towards Russia and Russians themselves. And according to recently, because it was, I think, in March this year, in a recently conducted poll by the Centrum Polsko-Rosyjskiego Dialogu i Porozumienia, when Polish people were asked, what are Russians good at, the answers actually ranged from nothing or through maybe drinking and to maybe ballet or opera singing. So based on these answers, it's quite visible that maybe the attitude of us, of Poles, towards Russians is maybe more hostile or rather more stereotypical rather than realistic.
At the end of the 19th, after dynamic changes in not only in politics but also in economy and in culture, Poland stood at a crossroads. Poland at the time had already been fascinated with America for many years, and the fascination grew rapidly after the strong Russian influences started to fade away after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. It was due to the fact that America stood at the other pole across from Soviet Russia, the latter symbolizing for the Poles lack of freedom and of economic opportunity. Through the post-war communist period, millions of Poles listened to Free Radio Europe and the Voice of America, which invested the US with prestige and credibility, mostly liked by the official Polish institutions. Now, as we look around with American fast food outlets in every corner, and with Polish scenes fashion-wise are virtually impossible to distinguish from the American ones, and with music being constantly played on the radio, and its movies and TV shows dominating the industry, there is no question whether Poland is being Americanized, because we can see the American influence literally everywhere. And as for the associations with America, in his essay, Polish Students and Their Perceptions of America and the Americans, Piotr Surkowski referred to a survey in which people associated America with places such as Hollywood, New York, Disneyland, and Las Vegas. And Polish people see America as a country offering great opportunities and well-paid jobs and freedom, which as a whole is known as the American dream. Some referred to their increasing role of sports such as jogging, basketball, and aerobics, and a significant number of answers also dealt with fast food restaurants such as Burger King and McDonald's, and fast eating and everything that originated in the United States. Another area pointed to was films and TV. And the American influence can be seen on a daily basis in these brands. And here we have some of the best known. They dominated the Polish ones, and that's the point I wanted to make.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about hypocrisy of the Poles. Guerrillas patriotism is a term which was first coined by Alexis de Tocqueville in his book Democracy in America, in which he was describing the ways in which Americans perceive their nation and its historical value. It basically refers to the exaggerated glorification of national pride and, as de Tocqueville put it, Their vanity is not only greedy, but restless and jealous. And when it comes to its outreach to Poland, it can be seen in various situations. Polish symbols can be seen in many public places, such as graffitis, such as walls painted with graffitis, which show Polish American symbols, and a wide range of coloring blocks, which require the kids to fill them in with to fill in the contours of Polish historical figures, such as kings and knights. And that kind of coloring books can be seen almost in every post office. When it comes to the hypocrisy of the Poles itself, we often perceive immigrants as people who come to our country only to take away our potential jobs or threaten our safety. Especially that applies to Muslims, who we perceive as terrorists, and we accuse them of lack of common sense. Some of the examples of hypocrisy of the Poles is that we are crazy about the American lifestyle and its openness, but at the same time we don't want any foreigners to enter our own country. When something bad happens, we usually put the blame on Muslims, and we tend to make our citizens national heroes. And the perfect example of such a case was in Berlin in December 2016 in a terrorist attack. And non-active participation of a Pole in the attack was exaggerated to the point where he was said to have defended himself against the attacker by grabbing the steering wheel and preventing a much bigger amount of fatalities. So concluding, Poland has been influenced by many countries, especially Russia, which occupied Poland in the end of the 20th century, and the United States, which is the main factor contributing to the contemporary Polish culture. Following that, American symbols and brands originated there can be seen almost everywhere. And despite the admiration towards American hospitality, we ourselves are not that keen on allowing foreigners to enter our borders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions?
Thank you. I just want to a little bit comment that because a few of the presenters before this, so as like you, right? Most of them say that Islam is terrorist. Well, actually, because I'm myself is as a Islam Muslim, and then, but I feel that for most of us, the people who make a terror another people, or we say the terrorists, right? In our side too, they are not a Muslim itself, because in our religion, as like Catholic and other Buddhists and Hindus, we love peace, and then so we said the people, or maybe because they are from the Islamic, who the people have Islam religion who attack another people. We are most of us as a Muslim Democrat Islam. We say that they are not our part, and they are the other side of other world. They are not a Muslim itself, and then it's a kind of like interesting research, I think. And then is I just want to asking about with all of the research, which one the good outside foreigner influence for Poland itself.
So in our opinion, when it comes to maybe more positive examples of, for example, American influence, for us it's mostly just the fact that, let's say, we don't like close ourselves on just our culture, and maybe I don't know, because I feel like to this very day many Poles have very stereotypical and very stereotypical attitudes towards any other religion or any other country. So I think when it comes to American influence, the good thing about it is maybe the fact that in the future, because today it's not very visible yet, but maybe in the future we will be just more open to other cultures. And yes, just like we said in our presentation, we won't only take the things from other cultures that are convenient for us, but rather, like the problem of immigration, we also become more important in Poland, and we will see more positive sides of it because of the other influences that are visible in the world right now.
Okay, yep, thank you very much. Okay, thanks. And the last speaker is Mr. Szczerbowicz with the challenges facing the Arctic region governance.
So, ladies and gentlemen, so back to the Arctic, but at the beginning, please let me start with my private experience. 2 months ago, I luckily attended the Arctic Science Summit Week in Prague, just like some of you too. I met a scholar there, one of the leading scientists in the field of international relations in the Arctic. During our long and inspiring conversation, I asked him a proper question. Sir, could you give me a long-term forecast on the Arctic future? He smiled at me and answered, you know, I have been studying the Arctic international relations for many years now. I have published a few books and several scientific articles about this topic, and you know what, I cannot answer your question because I really don't know. So where the world is heading, or where is the world heading? Well, formulating predicates about the future is without a doubt a difficult task, but forecast is one of the three functions of the modern social sciences with description and explanation. Having that in mind, the need that stands at the beginning of my research is to understand the Arctic governance model, and which is nowadays a crucial category in considering the Arctic international relations at all. To respond to this need, I decided to adopt a theoretical approach. It is the club model governance, a common work of Robert Cohen and Joseph Nye, one of the leading international relations scholars. It is within the liberal tradition. The main message of my presentation is to show the incompatibility of the old club model governance to the contemporary world. So multi-level cooperation was remarkably extensive, indeed unprecedented, in the latter half of the 20th century. International institutions have facilitated cooperation by reducing the cost of making agreements through established rules and practices. Key regimes for governance were formed to govern the issue areas, the problematic areas, and they operated like clubs. Until recently, the international regimes, for example, like World Trade Organization, that made the system work, were largely invisible to publics. We're characterizing them as following a club model of institutions. Their members constructed rules, they negotiated in secret, then reported their agreements to national legislators and publics. Keeping their internal deliberation confidential was naturally in their collective interest. Some of these regimes were selective in membership or required meeting a set of standards imposed by the original participants. The club model was very convenient for officials negotiating these agreements within issue areas, since it kept the outsiders out. Protected by the lack of transparency, ministers could make a package deals that were difficult to disaggregate or even sometimes to understand. Until recently, they were largely unchallenged. From the standpoint of negotiators oriented toward reaching agreements, these were the positive features of the negotiating situation. Under the club model, a lack of transparency for outsiders was a key to political efficiency. From the perspective of multilateral cooperation, the club model can be judged a great success. The world seems more peaceful, more prosperous, and even somewhat cleaner, at least on some environmental issues like in the Arctic. So, how does it look in the Arctic? The Arctic is in the midst of great transformation, which includes environmental, social, economic, political, and legal changes. These changes are attracting the attention of researchers from many disciplines, policymakers, local business, and transnational corporation, of course, ecologists, and local communities, which are facing the direct battle against the effect of changes. There is a growing number of stakeholders interested in decision-making affecting the region. In the modern world, the states are the first runners to govern the issue areas. However, quantifiable dimension of international cooperation in the region is relatively dependent on political factors. It means that the will of activity is coming directly from the Arctic states, so US, Canada, Denmark, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Russia. Well, you can see that it is a unique constellation of different countries, the Western and Russia. But these countries share a group of common interests from being the Arctic states. The photograph we can see is coming from the last ministerial meeting of the Arctic Council, an intergovernmental institution. The Arctic Council were established as a high-level forum to provide a means for promoting cooperation, coordination, and interaction among the Arctic states. We know it is unique having Rex Tillerson, U.S. Secretary of State, and Sergei Lavrov, Russia's foreign minister, at one place at the same time. And like I said before, the states are the first runners to govern the issue areas, but they can struggle in cooperation with the others from the governance triangle. The environmental issues and indigenous people's rights are explicitly present in the narration of non-governmental organizations, and business matters are a multinational corporation's domain. It implies certain problems for the Arctic Council to govern the issue areas within the regional regime. The international institutions in the Arctic help to fill the institutional and legal gap in the circumpolar international relations and are in foreseeable future expected to make strategic decisions about the results of rapidly changing Arctic. as a high-level intergovernmental forums with high level of accountability. They relatively lack transparency and could have substantial internal dangers of stalemate in negotiations and external threats of variability of domestic politics of the Arctic states. These institutions are not a trisectoral network, a hybrid governance. However, shortcomings in transparency and participation therein are relatively easy to fix. On this graph, we can see a typical liberal formula of international multi-level governance. Meeting the broadly democratic standards stimulates strong legitimacy, and that means the inclusiveness of the civic society and business sector to the governance. The main aim of my presentation was to present a different approach of studying the circumpolar governance and to contextualize it globally. I examined this topic by description of the old club, of the old club governance and explanation of contemporary Arctic, and by showing some signs of improvement in the international governance. Although I am aware of the limits of adopted methods, possible subsequent problems in its operationalization and the level of my research advancement. My desire is to fill the present gaps in the literature of the subject and to provide knowledge about the poorly researched areas. For me, the ultimate objective of being scientist within the social sciences is to understand and explain the phenomenon. Please let me finish my presentation with the last liberal example today. We can see it on this slide. You're probably thinking for some time what it has in common with the topic of my presentation. I will tell you that it has everything. Well, there is an old liberal example of the cake cutting in the international relations. The cake as a whole is a metaphor of outcome of the international relations, so baking the cake. That was between the states until recently, baking that cake, and maybe with business sector and civil society now. Every actor contributes during this baking according to the capabilities and gets comparatively to it during the cake cutting. It shows the importance of the absolute gains rather than the relative gains in the international relations. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions to the speaker? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. Okay, I would like to say thank you to all the speakers in the morning session, and now we're going to have a quarter of a coffee break. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, right now, no coffee break, unfortunately, but yeah, maybe. Nevertheless, right now we will have a 1 minute session of posters, so feel free to upload your 1 minute presentation, and please do it now, because, well, we are running out of time. So maybe just a 5 minute break, and then we will run the third session.
Okay, so we are ready. Yes, everybody applaud the presentation for the 1 minute poster session. Yes. Okay, that's great.
Okay. Please take your seat. And we will start with Paulina Aniszkiewicz. So, sorry, Aniszkiewicz.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paulina Aniszkiewicz, and I'm a PhD student of Institute of Oceanology. Today, I want to show you two posters. First of them is the comparison of water temperature, salinity, and current data from the Nordfocus project with results from a model in the Porsanger Fjord. And this work is a part of cooperation with Institute for Marine Research in Bergen. And the second poster is about statistical analysis of meteorological conditions in two fjords, Porsanger and Horsund, and it's a part of my PhD thesis. So, and number of posters is first and second, so I invite you. Thank you.
Okay. Next person.
Thank you very much. Next person will be Łukasz Braszka.
Okay, hello. It's done. Okay, my name is Łukasz Braszka. I'm a PhD student in Gdansk University. And I'd like to ask you for help because we have a problem with a case of a death of Mr. Dawson, one of our rats. We have gathered an evidence of what we found out about it, but still with this evidence and many nights without sleep, we don't have any clue what could happen to the rat. And all the info and more you will find in the placard number 3 in this inconspicuous title, potential cardiotoxicity of urethane in Wistar rats, somewhere there. So please visit me during the poster session and we'll talk about it and maybe we will find a solution. With this many bright minds gathered here, I'm sure we will find at least something. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next speaker will be Joanna Brokowska.
Hello, my name is Joanna Brokowska and I'm PhD student from Faculty of Biology, University of Gdansk, and the subject of my presentation is induction of persistent genotoxic stress as a mechanism of the selective anti-cancer activity of isothiocyanates. Isothiocyanates are compounds found naturally mostly in broccoli, and we know about anti-cancer and chemopreventive properties of these compounds, but little is known about mechanism of their selectivity. So I study impact of two isothiocyanates on DNA damage in healthy and in cancer cells, and my study shows that induction of persistent genotoxic stress only in cancer cells may partially explain mechanism of selectivity these compounds. And this is my poster, and I invite you. Number 4. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next authors of the poster, Joanna Bukowska and Edyta Bukowska.
Hello everyone, my name is Adita and this is Asha and we're from poster number 5. So we live in the 21st century and it's not a surprise to say that the internet has a huge impact in our lives. It has become a feature around which we revolve in, whether we like it or not. It has truly changed the way we live, mostly for the better, but is it really true? not many people are aware of the negative impact social media has on our society, especially the younger generation. We believe that adolescents aren't as affected by it because they didn't grow up using it or not, and are not exposed to it as the youngsters are. And of course, what we're trying to say here is that social media shouldn't be banned or illegal, but we should all learn to distinguish the fine line between reality and the internet. So if you'd like to find out more about the negative impact social media has on our society, we'd be more than happy to explain. Thank you.
Thank you. And next speaker, please, will be Agata Cieszyńska.
Hello everyone, my name is Agata Cieszyńska. I'm a PhD student here at the Institute of Oceanology, Polish Academy of Sciences, and I'm working on developing the numerical model for the Baltic Sea, so the regional numerical model, and I'm working with two models, Princeton Ocean Model and Ecological Regional Ocean Model. And while I was working on it and analyzing the different aspects of influencing by the environmental condition on the phytoplankton blooms, I faced the picocyanobacteria issue, and I recognized that there is no approach in numerical models of the Baltic Sea to picocyanobacteria. That's why I decided to face it and started to develop the algorithm. We've analyzed in the laboratory different environmental conditions and estimated the growth rates, pigmentation, fluorescence of chlorophyll A parameters, and pigmentation. And today I would like to show you only the photochemical aspects, and my poster is number 6. So if you want to see where the numerical oceanology world is heading, I hope I invite you to see my poster on the wall opposite the screen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Agata. And now, next speaker will be Elżbieta Dołęga.
Hello everyone, my name is Elżbieta Dołęga. I'm from the University of Gdansk and I'm a first year at the American Studies. My poster is about how our Earth has actual limits, our planet, even though we are very innovative and we try to change it in a lot of ways. There actually are some things that we cannot change with it. There are some limits that cannot be passed. I wanted to talk about them, how there's much land, how much food can Earth produce, and so on and so on. My poster is number 7. It is unfortunately at the other side of the poster walls. So if you want to know more about how people influence our planet, how much there is of them, and how it will affect everything, I would be very glad to talk about it and answer any question you would have.
Thank you very much. An author of next poster is Wiktoria Dołynna.
Hello everyone. My name is Wiktoria Dołynna and I am a student of oceanography at the University of Gdansk. My topic of my poster presentation is marine alternatives against antimicrobial microbes, and it is devoted to the antimicrobial resistance is global problem which is spreading and developing around the world, and it's threatening our ability to treat infection disease. And I will introduce some recent results of studies on the antimicrobial activity of cyanobacteria in Baltic Sea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, Aleksandra Dydecka. Is she present or not? Okay, so let's go on. Patrycja Grzyś.
Hello everyone, my name is Patricia and I've got a presentation that I hope everyone will be interested in because the topic is concerning every one of us. I'm an urban observer, like we all are to some extent, and I want to encourage you to think about urban environment, especially in the context of today's conference, and to encourage you and stimulate your curiosity. I've got a short question. Probably most of you have got any clue where this photo was taken. I thought I've got as well, but I was wrong because of that. And that's what comes to my mind when I think about global, where our world is heading, and global unification, global standardization by that. And if you've got any questions and any thoughts, please share them with me. I'll be more than happy. And my poster is number 10. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next speaker, Marta Haraburda.
Hello everyone, my name is Marta Haraburda. With Agata Schwarz and Natalia Walczuk, we are members and sympathizers of science club, student science club of hydrobiology and water protection. Tadeusz Namiotko is our supervisor and is professor of University of Gdansk, where this club is working. Our research topic is environmental determinants of invertebrates' taxonomic diversity in temporary waters of the upper and middle Limpopo River basins in Botswana and South Africa. South African fauna is relatively poorly known, especially invertebrates. We had 28 samples with benthos from bottom sediment. Electric conductivity, pH, and temperature were checked in situ, rest in laboratory. We looked for a relationship between the structure and taxonomic composition of aquatic invertebrate assemblages and environmental and climate factors. Assemblage type A was dominated by copepods Cyclopoidae, B by larvae of Chironomida midges, and C with predominant water boatman Coryxida and ostracods Cypridopsina. RDA showed that Chironomida midges and Dithecida beetles prevailed in the areas with higher annual precipitation, while Cyclopida prefers semi-arid areas. Local factors related by water chemistry, temperature, and sediment type was less important. I want to invite you to poster number 11. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this detailed presentation. And next author will be Patrycja Juchniewicz. Okay, no Patrycja. So let's go on. Magdalena Kosecka, also absent. Dawid Kościelniak.
Hello, my name is Dawid Kościelniak and I'm in the second year PhD student at the University of Gdansk Faculty of Biology. My poster presentation today is about the transcriptional slippage, which is the process that occurs during the transcription. And if some of you are interested into microbiology or the molecular biology, I encourage you to visit my poster. We will have a quite interesting conversation about this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Which number?
Okay, number 13. So next speaker, Klaudyna Krause. Okay. Jan Adam Karpiński and Dominika Kuberska, also absent. Okay. Andrzej Zakrzewski, Dominika Pietrzak, Martyna Laskowska.
So our poster is about technological development. It shows how quickly and easily people from different parts of the world can communicate. And
we think that this is the biggest part of today's world, and it is almost everywhere on our phones, computers, and even we can connect it with our TV. And important fact is that it was not possible for, I don't know, maybe 20 years earlier. So the world is heading towards social network development, and in our opinion, it is something really good and useful.
It is number 17, so we encourage you to take a look at it and think about it.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker will be Marek Lubośny.
Hi. So, what science is about? Science is about the truth, or at least should be about the truth. Unfortunately, there are cases where something that was true for very, very, very long really isn't. So, my poster shows one of those cases. Moreover, it shows how difficult it is to reach the conservative scientific community with the quote-unquote new truth. So come find me and listen to the story of the missing ATP8 gene number 99990 here on the left. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marek. And now Joanna Łaszcz.
Good morning. Good morning. After World War II, social problems were the main reason for social revolutions and the colonization process in Dutch colonies. Social problems in the mother country were a result of these movements and also the major cause for a thinking revolution and activists' work. Lucia is a creative revolutionary group from the Netherlands. It was set up in the 80s to reduce social pressures and show us, by making posters in creative thinking workshops, that we bear responsibility for private and social life. Lucia is a Dutch girl's name used to embody an image of a teenager, wondering about life. She asks questions, thinks independently, and breaks rules, also linguistic ones, when writing surprising texts as her reaction to the surrounding reality. More information about Lucia, poster number 18. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Jakub Maculewicz. Okay. So let's go on. Agnieszka Macel. Also absent. Jowita Nowakowska.
Good afternoon. My name is Jowita Nowakowska, and I am PhD student of the School of Molecular Biology, Institute of Biochemistry and Biophysics, Polish Academy of Science. The topic of my presentation is identifying the mechanism underpinning transport of amyloid precursor protein from the endoplasmic reticulum to the cytosol. And I would like to tell you about cellular mechanism that is involved in the development of Alzheimer's disease. Thank you. My poster is 22.
Okay, thank you very much. And next speaker, Magdalena Podlacha. Okay. Anna Raczkowska.
Hello, my name is Anna Raczkowska and I'm a PhD student in the Institute of Oceanology of the Polish Academy of Sciences and I will be presenting poster about application of in situ fluorimeter as a useful tool for characterization of dissolved organic matter in the European Arctic and for refinement of water masses classification in the Nordic seas. Nordic seas are located here, so it's a Norwegian Sea, Barents Sea and the Greenland Sea. I have data from 2 summer seasons and I will talk in details about one device from this complicated equipment and I strongly encourage you to visit me next to my poster. It's poster 24 and I will be happy to answer for your questions. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Next speaker, Joanna Rychlińska. Okay. Marta Sadowska. Okay. Konrad Schlichholz.
Okay, so at the beginning I would like to say sorry to everyone. I'm a horrible English speaker, but I have my notes, so maybe it won't be a total disaster. But my topic of the poster is recent Arctic sea ice variability and its atmospheric imprints. We say here some variability, so okay. My name is Gunnar Schlichtholz. I'm a student of physics on University of Gdansk. Second author is associate professor in Institute of Oceanology, Paweł Schlichtholz. And I think everyone here heard about global warming, especially after this conference. The decrease of Arctic ice is pretty obviously correlated with this phenomenon. After these few big words, I will say something about my poster because that's the topic of this presentation. In the beginning we will mainly concentrate on warm Arctic cold Eurasia pattern, which is often associated with decrease of Arctic sea ice cover. And you might ask, what is new in this in my poster? So during my investigation of data we made, we have discovered a probably the shift in a seasonal cycle. It's probably shift. It's not certain, but pretty interesting. And also, it's not everything. Last year was extremum event. We investigate it a little bit. It's we see it here. And,
okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
yes.
Konrad.
And just for more information, 27 from what I remember.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker will be Krzysztof Senderak.
Hello everyone. I'm from Center for Polar Studies at the University of Silesia. I'm Krzysztof Senderak. My poster is third from left side, number 28. I would like to present my geomorphological studies from Spitsbergen, which were based on geophysical measurements. Include two methods: electrical resistivity tomography and ground penetrating radar. The aim of study was describing of early evolution, early development of talus slopes, maybe enough.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, Hanna Sominiak. Okay. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Hanna Sominka. I'm PhD student in Department of Medical Biology and Genetics at University of Gdansk. Let me invite you to my poster, which is about the role of ADAM3 protein in resyntoxicity and in its intercellular transport. I have some interesting results, so if you want to know something more, come to my poster, number 31.
Okay, thank you. And last but not least, okay. So I've got some error in my notes. So I think right now Szymon Spoliński will run his short presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. We would like to invite you to see our poster presenting exciting research on the European flounder from the Baltic Sea. We use archival materials of fish ear bones, so-called otoliths, and we measured annual increments which are visible in their structure. We have some special stuff, some special equipment and real samples, so I hope that you will be able to see them. And based on these measurements, we develop biochronology, which reflects changes in the fish growth over the years. And we show that hydroclimatic factors have influence on the fish growth, and also ecosystem regime shifts have something to do with it. So feel free to ask any questions at any time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And right now, Marta Szubska. Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marta Szubska, and I'm a PhD student here in the Institute of Oceanology, Polish Academy of Science. And I work on arsenic and its compounds in the Baltic Sea environment. I came across this idea when working on the chemical munition dump sites, which are located in the Baltic Sea. In the previous projects, we were searching for the chemical warfare agents, and as some of them are based on organic arsenic compounds, we tried to estimate if in those areas of chemical munition dump sites arsenic concentrations are elevated. However, we had lack of data about the normal concentrations of arsenic in the area of the southern Baltic Sea that I decided to prepare a complex research on the natural sources of arsenic in the bottom sediments of Baltic Sea and its correlations with types of sediments and environmental conditions. So if you are interested, please visit my poster number 32. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marta. And next speaker will be Justyna Szuszkiewicz. No Justyna with us. Okay, so Gracja Topka. Okay. Karolina Wilkowska. Kinga Wiśniewska.
Hello, my name is Kinga Wiśniewska and I'm a student of Oceanography at University of Gdansk. The topic of my study is internal and external factors determining polycyclic organic hydrocarbons in household dust. And you can agree with me that the quality of indoor air is an important issue, especially as we spend in such area about 80% of daytime. So if you want to know if your health is in danger because of your house, I invite you to poster number 36.
Okay, thank you. And the next speaker, Anita Wojtczyk. No, Anita with us. So, Kacper Mateusz Woźniak.
Hello everyone, I'm Mateusz Woźniak from Gdansk University of Technology. Today I prepared poster number 38. I would like to show you a new chromatographic method for determination of amphetamines in blood. We developed a method for determination of 6 showed amphetamines, which are the most popular among abusers. Our method is simply rapid, sensitive. We applied this method for the determination of amphetamines in 22 toxicological cases. And if you want something to know about my study, please see poster number 38. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And Piotr Zawistowski. Okay, so our list is end. Did we miss anyone? I hope no. So that will conclude our third session. So right now we will have a lunch break and then we will run with session number 4, which is natural science. Thank you very much.